with an introduction. Could you please introduce yourself, what you were doing in the past and what you're doing right now?
So my name is Stepan Snigirev. So we worked with you, you know that.
Yeah.
First in Moscow at Russian Academy of Sciences and then Russian Quantum Center. And then I moved to Munich to work at Max Planck Institute of Quantum Optics. So my background is quantum physics, experimental labs, and all this weird stuff that we were building. And then a few years ago, I switched from academia to kind of industry. So I moved to Bitcoin. So I was interested in cryptography and this magic internet money. And I started while working in the lab to researching and reading the papers and so on. And then at some point I decided, okay, I think that I enjoy Bitcoin and cryptography more than quantum physics. So I switched. And now we are running a small company. It's a startup. We are doing hardware wallet and software wallet and enterprise solution and a bunch of other stuff in Bitcoin field. So, and I'm a CTO here.
Yeah. Probably today we will be talking a lot about Bitcoin. Could you maybe summarize, if it's possible, very briefly, what is it Bitcoin, like in a couple of sentences?
In a couple of sentences, well, yeah, magic internet money, decentralized, without relying on any government or central authority. This is probably the key point, such that the government cannot just take your money and emit another millions of dollars like they're doing right now. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. It's based on very fancy math. So elliptic curves, digital signatures, also this blockchain stuff that is basically linked list and so on. So it is a very nice geeky merge of different technologies like computer science and cryptography that allows us to use the money that are actually not controlled by humans.
Yeah. And right now we're talking mostly, so when you're talking about Bitcoin, it sounds like it's more technical currency than, let's say, financial currency, right? In the sense, like when you're talking about, let's say, dollar or euro, you're thinking about like finances. But when you say things like Bitcoin, it sounds more like it's technical term.
Yeah, it is technical term, and it was developed by like software developers, engineers, and cryptographers. And most of these people, well, are not really experts in economy, probably. But I mean, just what I remember from economy classes at the university, like the top tech of the economy is like linear regression or something. So I think that it might be, first, it is a completely different way comparing to normal money. So like their economists are designing things and policies, and here we have mathematicians and engineers designing it. And therefore it has pretty good chances to become something interesting just because it is different. Yeah, so without all this legacy background from economy and from what they think is right or wrong.
Yeah, and Bitcoin was developed quite a while ago. And do you see that, let's say right now, more people from finances are jumping into the community, or it's still right now in 2021, it's more a community of technical engineers, I don't know, like scientists, or there are like a small part of finances?
There are actually big financial players coming into Bitcoin, and also like economists that are describing, so there is even a term, I think, Austrian economy, so like a bunch of economists describing what is happening in Bitcoin and also in like a normal financial system. And yeah, so it is like a pretty developed tech right now that includes also not just geeks, but also economists and also large companies. So like recently some companies started not only like adapting Bitcoin, but also buying them for their like reserves. Like MicroStrategy bought a few, I don't know, numbers with a huge amount of zeros, like billions, trillions, or whatever. I don't know, something unimaginable.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is developing pretty fast, and it will continue rising, I think, for a few more months. And now I think that there will be more interested from common audience, like from normal people, and then there will be another bubble, and it will crash again, and then again we will have a few more years to quietly develop things without all this buzz in social media. Yeah.
And now I have a question, because now we're talking about, let's say, people from finances in comparison to people which are coming from the technical background. And to understand what the Bitcoin is, you probably have to have some decent background in math or physics to really understand what it is. So is it really hard to comprehend right now, let's say, Bitcoin without having a deep background in math?
Well, I mean, it depends on the level how much you want to understand. So if you just hand waving, then basically you don't need any math background. So you just need to have a common sense, and then you understand that, okay, yeah, probably if you just think about digital signatures, for example, not from the math perspective, but just like it is a stamp and I'm stamping the messages, and only if the message is stamped by me, then it is a valid message. So this kind of understanding doesn't require a math degree, right? So even on this level, people can understand the concept and like the philosophy of Bitcoin. But if you want to develop either on top of that or can understand better how to secure your funds, how to develop new apps, then you need to go into math. But also I know that plenty of developers don't even understand how the underlying cryptography works, and still they are able to write interesting applications. So it depends on where on this kind of how deep you want to go and at what level you want to develop something. If you just want to invest and maybe hold and multiply your money, then you don't need much to understand. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, is it a problem if you're coming, let's say, to a field of Bitcoin without deep knowledge? Would it be a problem to, let's say, start manipulating, let's say, start even buying the Bitcoins or sell the Bitcoins? And I feel like you have to have some understanding what's going on under the hood, because it seems to me like it will be quite challenging to put some trust in if you don't understand something deeper, or maybe just me.
Yeah, so for me also, it was very important to understand what exactly I am buying and to become confident that it will not disappear in like 5-10 years. And actually, people can get into troubles if they just buy because the price is going up, because you know that it's not only Bitcoin, there are also other cryptocurrencies, right? Like there are so many, and 99.9% of them are dying in 1 year, and another 100 of altcoins are appearing again. And so if you don't understand like what is interesting and what technology is interesting and what can actually do something useful, then you will just spread your money across all these useless altcoins and you will lose the money. So what you need instead, or like if you want to start developing in one of the fields, then you also probably want to look at where you think like what will be more promising. So for me, when I started looking into Bitcoin, I also was looking into other coins like Monero, for example, and Ethereum and so on. I was a little bit altcoin confused, let's say. Yeah, and after a while, I understood that, okay, I want to spend all of my time only on Bitcoin, and I think that the best investment of my time and my money is actually Bitcoin. But to make this decision, you actually need to educate yourself and to understand that, okay, yeah, I trust myself. I understand enough of this technology, so I can say that yes, probably in 10 years it will still be there.
Yeah. And I have another question, which is going back to the beginning of our discussion, which is you started working in the quantum technology labs, let's say, right? And then you switched to Bitcoin. Why did you do that? So because you were working in academia for quite a while, and then you decided, okay, it's time for me to move to something new.
Yeah, so that's actually funny. First, quantum physics is damn hard. Yeah, like really, math is really complicated, and like experimental work is also very difficult. Like you spend like 3, 4, 5 years to build a setup, and then hopefully you make something new such that as an outcome you get a paper. Hopefully in Nature, but probably physref letters or something like that.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, and I mean, it looks like, okay, you put so many efforts, so much efforts, you spend a lot of time, you are making something really, really amazing, but nobody cares. And it's a little bit depressing.
Not like nobody cares. I mean, some people do care, but maybe, if you go into Bitcoin, it will be a different community. But continue.
So like the thing is, who cares? Other people that work in the same field. And your contribution into the world in general, you don't feel like you are changing the world. I mean, you are developing something new and fancy, and sometimes you are lucky and you will eventually change the world, probably. But it's very difficult to reach that. So I wanted something faster, cheaper, simpler. Yeah, so it was like lazy me moving to another field. But the main thing here is that what I was getting by moving from quantum physics to Bitcoin. Interest in math is still there, so cryptography is very interesting. And even though I'm not a cryptographer by education, because of our quantum physics background, I was able to read the scientific papers and understand how all the stuff works and build on top of that. Then another thing is that if you're developing something, if you're developing new protocol or new software or something else, you actually see the immediate application of that in the real world. So like the whole ecosystem is very new, and the audience is very broad. So first, there are plenty of places where you can contribute, just because it's like 11 years old, the whole Bitcoin field. And you, no matter what is your like background and how good you are at math and crypto and so on, you will find a place where you can apply your skills. And then second, then the influence is directly visible, because there are also people that are using this software or hardware or protocols and so on, and kind of you immediately see the appreciation of normal people on your work. So kind of the whole cycle between the developing a new tech and actually changing the way how people interact with the system is much shorter. Yeah, so this is what I really enjoyed. But also for me, what was why I decided to move, I never really felt like I'm a top tier quantum physicist. And, so after you've done your postdoc, so PhD and then postdoc, you need to think what you want to do next. And if you are very smart and very cool and so on, you will probably be able to get your own lab and start your own experiments, and you will have enough funding, but you have to be extraordinary. So it's not the case for me. So I was like,
okay. You're very humble.
No, I mean, realistically, we don't have enough papers in Nature to be able to ask for the lab in the top university with the top funding. Yeah, so no question. It's not I'm humble or not humble. It's just numbers. H index, Hirsch index. Is it large enough so you kind of do you have a name in the community? I didn't have a name, so doesn't necessarily mean that I'm stupid, even though I don't think that I'm super smart. But we spent too much time on just building the labs instead of
you're just not lucky enough.
So I decided to find another field that is interesting for me and start kind of merge together these things that are interesting. So both research and also direct application of the development in the wild.
Yeah, and was it complicated? Because now you're coming from the background of quantum mechanics or quantum physics, let's say, and okay, this field is quite complicated, but I think if you're talking to most of the people, Bitcoin is complicated as well for them. It seems like it's some peculiar crypto things doing some very complicated math.
So I spent probably like half a year or a year researching and reading about Bitcoin before I actually finally decided to move there. So it takes a while, but what I was doing, I was working in the lab and in the evenings or in the mornings, I was spending like 1-2 hours on understanding how Bitcoin works. And in principle, I wouldn't say that it is too difficult. So if you imagine you have a task, you want to move to another field of quantum physics. For example, you were always working with atomic clocks, and now you want to move to photonics. So you need to read about a new research field and learn a lot of new physics and equations and math that is in there, and also learn a bunch of things that are like, if you are moving to the experimental lab, how people doing it differently. Or even if you are moving from ultra cold atoms to ultra cold ions, still the physics is different. So here it is also like switching a field. So you learn new math, you learn new tech, you learn new frameworks, and you're all set. So I think that it's doable for an intelligent person that is working in the quantum physics or any other research. Yeah, and you just need to be interested in the field. So you just first need to trigger to understand if it is something that you want to do or not.
Yeah, and right now we are talking about learning, let's say, learning Bitcoin, but there are no really like real source, because quantum mechanics or quantum physics is taught in most of the university where there is a physical program, right? But Bitcoin is something relatively new, as you said, it's 11 years old.
Well, you don't need to learn Bitcoin. You need to learn cryptography. So everything that so Bitcoin is just a cryptographic system, nothing else. So it's just a technology built on top of cryptography. So you take a Cryptography 101 course on Coursera, for example, Cryptography 1 by Dan Bonnet. You listen to it, you understand how symmetric, asymmetric cryptography works and things like that. And then you start reading how Bitcoin is built on top of that. So like all the building blocks of Bitcoin are just cryptography or computer science things. So if you know a little bit of cryptography and a little bit of computer science, you can understand how Bitcoin works.
Okay, and if you consider, let's say, in 2021, a person who wants to switch to Bitcoin, would you still recommend to do that? Or in a sense, Bitcoin is some sort of field, a community, and is it a good time to enter this field or community, to switch the field?
Yes, I think that it is a good time, mostly because it's still very early. So like, yeah, when I was joining it, it was like 7 years old probably, and now it is more like 11. Well, maybe I'm messing up numbers, I don't know. Anyways, we don't have enough developers and technical people in the community to actually continue actively developing. And now when the companies are entering the field, they desperately need employees as well. And they also need not just employees, but they also need CTOs, people that can invent something new, that can figure out something interesting, how to work with all this stuff. So I think that it is a very good time, and I think that it will be a good time for another maybe even 10 years to get into Bitcoin, because it requires a pretty unique skill set that is perfectly fitted for researchers and scientists. So you need to like learning something new. You need to be able to handle scientific papers and really difficult to digest math. Yeah, and all this is normally what you do in quantum physics, for example. So I think that people like us are actually perfectly suited to move to Bitcoin. And regarding how to start, Yeah, I think we can put a few links in the description of the video with like good resources, like Cryptography course by Dan Banet, Programming Bitcoin book by Jimmy Song, and yeah, things like that. They're really great.
So pretty much if you have ability to learn new things, let's say relatively complicated math, you will be able to learn Bitcoin with resources which are available on the YouTube or whatever.
Yeah, free available resources, mostly books.
Yeah, and right now we are talking about, let's say, community of Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. And for me, this community is not really clear what it is because I'm coming from the academic background, and I know that in academia there are research centers, research labs, some part of industry involved, and this is kind of understandable who is players in this community. But now we're talking about Bitcoin community. Could you say a few words about who is actually playing in this community, and there are like big players, or it's like a small enthusiast working separately on their laptops?
So I can't say anything about other cryptocurrencies because I'm focusing purely on Bitcoin. So I will be describing the ecosystem of Bitcoin. There are a few very large companies. So first, there are miners that are mining new blocks and Bitcoins, and it is like the whole industry, and it is mostly located in China, and they are mostly hardware guys, so they are building new specialized chip like ASICs that are mining faster and faster and faster, and using cheap energy and so on. So for me, it is not very interesting, but maybe for someone. Then there are a few very large companies that are contributing into Bitcoin development, like the underlying protocol. So one is Blockstream. They are based in the United States, and yeah, it was funded by Adam Beck, who is like one of the people who talked to the original inventor of Bitcoin, and like who made some work even before Bitcoin was created. So they are working on a few interesting things, like also mostly protocol and cryptography and like really low level stuff. So this was basically my dream to join this company back in the days, and now it looks like maybe we'll be working with them on certain projects. Yeah, so Blockstream is a big player. Then there is another company called Chain Code Labs. They are mostly funding Bitcoin Core developers. So basically, there is a piece of software, Bitcoin Core, that is running this, well, that is basically a node in this Bitcoin network. So the Bitcoin network, like everybody who is involved in the network, they are running Bitcoin Core on their computers. And this node is what is enforcing these consensus rules, verifying all these new blocks and things like that. So this is like the critical piece of software for the whole ecosystem. And these guys are funding many developers to continue working on this project, actually. So they basically, as far as I know, they don't do any like commercial products. They just spend money on making Bitcoin as a whole more stable and better. Yeah, so this
there is no profit for this company.
There is no profit. So the profit for these guys is that, okay, if you make Bitcoin better, then the price of the Bitcoin will go high, and then the Bitcoins that we own will cost more. So basically, by helping the ecosystem, and there are many companies actually like this that are helping to develop the whole ecosystem, just without any like direct profits, just by hoping that, okay, if we contribute to the ecosystem now, then later we will get profits just by increase of the price of Bitcoin. Then there are plenty of exchanges that are trading between, you need to buy Bitcoin somehow. You also need to maybe buy US dollars or euros or altcoins like Monero, Dash, or whatever else. So these are big players, but they are like really focused on these traders. And for me personally, it's not very interesting because, I mean, all this trading stuff, it doesn't bring really any value like technologically.
Yeah.
So it's just a bunch of people that are trying to trick each other in sense of numbers of the price and then get some profit. So
But this is like where if you consider the standard finances, there where the most of the profit is coming from, right? When you're trading.
Yeah, so then here also, like I do understand that probably it is also important to create this volume and like to maintain this trading, because this exchanges and trading, this is basically the gateway between the classical financial industry and cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin industry. Yeah, but what can you do there? You just have the order book, you have the prices, and yeah, algorithmic trading maybe, but there are people that are very good at algorithmic trading and doing it for years. So I don't think that you can really compete there.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
So then I know that there are also grants by several companies. So basically, if you as an individual developer are working on something awesome, like a new protocol for privacy, for example, or something else, then certain companies and funds can actually pay you just to make sure that you can continue spending time on this. So this is also an interesting approach. So like you can be an individual researcher that is creating something new and awesome, and then you just find the company that will continue, that will finance you, basically like normal grants in academia. Yeah. So this is also possible. Then there is also another field that is hardware wallets. That's where I am actually. The thing is that you control your Bitcoins only if you control your private key. So your private key is just a number that you need to be very, very careful with not to share it with anyone. So if you are storing this number on your computer, then you have a problem because the computer can be compromised. So like virus or whatever, and your private key is gone. So there is a whole industry of these hardware wallets that's basically where you move your secret from your computer to a dedicated device. And you store it there, and it is able to verify your transactions, display you the information what exactly you are signing, and do it like you actually sign and then send to the computer already signed transaction. And there are like Ledger, the company is based in France, Trezor, the company based in Czech Republic. Then who else? Kobo, they are in China. Code Cards in Canada. So basically, sometimes they are small companies, sometimes they are large. So I think Ledger has around like maybe 100 employees. So not like super large, but reasonable sized companies.
Yeah, I see. So it seems like there are quite a few companies. But now, if we consider a person who would like to join this company and consider that he has background in quantum mechanics, or let's say just in physics in general, and he wants to join this company, what skills he should put in his CV to really enter, to land a job in this company, one of these companies?
Oh, boom. So obviously, what kind of software development, software like programming languages you work with? I don't know, Python, C, C++, JavaScript. It depends also on the company that you're applying to. For example, the hardware companies are obviously more interested in your engineering skills. So if you were designing like custom PCBs and manufacturing and working with microelectronics, FPGAs and so on, this is what you normally do in the experimental labs. And these are the skills that are probably required by these hardware companies. If you are like a theoretical guy and working well with data analysis or software development and so on, then you can look into other companies. For example, there is an emerging market of chain analysis companies. Basically, when large financial institutions are coming into the field, they have problems with the governments. that, okay, you need to know your client, maybe this KYC, know your client policy. So when you are exchanging money with someone, for example, you're accepting the payment, you need to know who you're accepting the payment from. And like the person, like the ID, and if this money are coming from some kind of money laundering or scam or phishing or whatever. So for this, these large companies are consulting with chain analysis companies that are trying to track all these scam or dark Bitcoins and see if you are getting any of them or not, and warn you if you have this problem. So if you're good at data analysis, for example, then this is a pretty interesting route. So you basically have this blockchain, a huge database with open data like transactions, what amount goes where and so on. And then you kind of can try to analyze this data and link together all these different transactions and see if this particular Bitcoin that came to this address, if it was related somehow with a hack that happened a few years ago. Yeah, so something like that. So this is pretty interesting for data analysis people, for example. Basically, I think that you can find interesting field for you no matter what kind of skills you have. Well, probably if you only know quantum physics and don't want to learn anything else, then it's not great. So how it worked for me, I just developed a bunch of small programs, services, or like basically libraries. So I developed one library and a bunch of small scripts that are doing something fun. Yeah. So I don't know, recovering your private keys with emojis, for example, or something else, like really stupid, but it also works as a proof that you know the underlying stuff, right? And normally you can get the job just by demonstrating that, okay, I know this thing. I know how Bitcoin works. I know how to derive keys or sign transactions or whatever. And what I also like about Bitcoin is that nobody cares about your background. The only thing that matters is if you can show that you can be useful, you can do something awesome.
Yeah, I think it's quite a vivid comparison to the academia, because in academia you have to have a decent track of publications, of work experience. But if we're talking right now about Bitcoin experience, it's pretty much people asking, can you do this and can you do it reliably? And if you're like 19 years old, nobody cares. You just can't, please do it. And this is a story.
Yeah, because also there are not many people that have any track in Bitcoin field, because just the whole field is 11 years old, 10 years old. So, I mean, yeah, if you say that I work on Bitcoin for 10 years, then, well, if you do work on Bitcoin for 10 years, then you don't need a job, because you probably have a huge pile of Bitcoins that you can just sell and live on Bali and enjoy the life for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And actually, now I have a following question. Let's say that you decided to switch from industry, academia, whatever, to Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. But this field of cryptocurrencies, they're maybe not as reliable, let's say, as well-established industries, right? Because you know that semiconductors, they were developed like years ago, and now they continue. Probably we will need laptops and our cell phones in the future. So this is kind of guaranteed. But if you enter the field of the Bitcoin, things might get not very reliable. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's true. So it's like joining a startup, because like Bitcoin is a huge startup basically, and all the companies out there are like startups. So there's always a risk of failure. And yeah, there is no guarantee. So you just need to take a risk if you really want to do it. But I mean that it is already a kind of a project that is alive for 10 years. And 10 years is pretty good for a startup. So my personal belief is that it will last forever, and it will become like on the water.
Yeah, and I think once you start working on the Bitcoin, if something can happen to Bitcoin, you will acquire some skills and knowledge which will be useful, let's say, for other currencies. Or okay, maybe Bitcoin will be, let's say, something happened to it, but then you have very important skills which nobody in the world has, and then it make you as an employee very valuable.
Yeah, that's true. And also, depending on what part of the ecosystem you want to join. For example, just talking personally about me, if Bitcoin collapses completely and disappears and nobody cares about it anymore, I got a bunch of skills on this hardware programming and also in the cryptography, so I can just take the route into this PGP encryption, key storage, and one-time passwords and authenticators and all this kind of security devices. Because I got the knowledge of how secure elements works, how all this whole industry works, and yeah, even if Bitcoin doesn't exist anymore, I don't care because I still have a lot of fun with applied stuff that is like close to it. Yeah. And I mean, if you evolve as a data analysis, for example, then also you will probably find another job. I don't know, probably it will be not so much fun working on, like, how to make your ad more effective or like optimizing the search engine. So it's not that exciting, but still, at least you will have the skills.
Yeah. And I know that if you're looking in the future, it's kind of hard to predict what's going to happen. But let's say, what's your prediction for the next 10 years? But very general in the sense, let's say if you jump, let's say right now, that in 10 years, the Bitcoin will be still there because you don't want to jump right now. Then next year it dies, then you kind of live with nothing. So what do you think will happen in the next 10 years or so?
So I think that Bitcoin will continue existing for another 10 years. So the protocol will evolve further. We will probably add a new signature scheme or maybe a few new signature schemes into Bitcoin. So probably new interesting applications. So like looking back maybe 5 years, what appeared, like all these second layer solutions that allows to make faster and cheaper payments and things like that. So yeah, I think that Bitcoin will continue existing. There will be new services. There will be large companies coming into the field and asking for experts in the field, not only for investment, but also hopefully banks will offer opening accounts evaluated in Bitcoin. That would be great. And in principle, I think that all this institutional and like industry stuff will, classical financial industry will start looking into Bitcoin. I think it's a very interesting project to join, actually. Yeah, and lots to learn there, lots of fun to, and also lots of things to develop. Yeah.
So there is like a huge room, or might not be a huge room, but there is a room for you to grow. Let's say if you want to jump into Bitcoin, there is always a new field for you which you can explore. And people in the community will even encourage you to do so, because as you described, some people put some efforts into maintain the Bitcoin just to grow the Bitcoin without getting any profit. So if you start exploring new field, people from the community will even encourage you to do so.
Yes, yeah, and you will also see the appreciation just in Bitcoin Twitter and in social media and so on. So this is also very nice when normal people appreciate what you're doing.
Oh, really? It's nice. So the Bitcoin community is more like friendly guys who like encouraging each other. Because if you're thinking about, let's say, banking or finances, there is kind of huge competition there, right? It's just definitely there is a tension.
I mean, it depends. The community as a whole cannot be always friendly and nice. So there are always toxic people and always people that are thinking differently, and there are holy wars and so on here and there. But generally, yeah, so the general direction of Bitcoin community is to direct into open source, first of all. So closed source is bad. If you're trying to patent something, it is bad. If you're trying to hide something from the community, it is considered to be bad. So the best way is if you are completely open with what you're developing and so on. And yeah, you will if you're scared that someone will take your idea and start making money of it, probably they will. But it looks like there is always a way to make money if you are thinking about something. You always have a competitive advantage because you invented something, so you know better how it works, and in your head you have already like the next level of this development. So it doesn't make sense to hide things. And in general, the community really appreciates open sourceness and like collaborative like contributions into development. So you can also imagine that if you start developing something, other people will join and help you just for free, no profit, nothing. So they just helping because they think you are awesome. So that's
but this is like, it's not their job, it's their, let's say, side hustle. They're helping you because it's their free time, and they just decided to help you because they think that this piece of technology is kind of nice, or it's their day job. So how is actually
no, so they probably will just help you just because they they think it is awesome. There might be people that will want to pay you just because they cannot contribute, but they want to support you. Yeah, so there will be companies that maybe will offer grants, offer to fund you to continue developing this kind of stuff if your ideas are nice and interesting. Yeah, so this is an interesting kind of unexpected behavior of this open source community, right? But it also happens because sometimes people that get into Bitcoin early, they became rich and they don't need to work anymore. So many of them just do stuff for fun just because they can afford that. Yeah. So this is a pretty unique community of people that are already rich, and other people that are trying to get rich, and also other people that are just trying to do something nice and interesting, but they are not rich. So like this complete mix of very different people. And
yeah, it seems like very interesting community and very interesting people
and very
put together.
unusual.
But if you, let's say, probably there are some seminars or conferences where you gather together and discuss things about Bitcoin. How does it look like?
So not during Corona, obviously, but actually now there are sometimes online meetups on Zoom or whatever. So there is even in this virtual reality meetups. But normally, yeah, there are like, I don't know, dozens of conferences during the year. Depending on the conference, like I'm talking about mostly just Bitcoin conferences. Yeah. So there can be very technical conferences that look very much like a normal scientific conference, like DayMob, for example, or something else, where people talk crypto and advanced things. There are also more like focused on the economics or on advertising the services and stuff. So all kind of conferences, yeah. And well, another interesting thing is that most of the Bitcoins, they are not like, they don't look like bankers, or, you know, they don't have a suit, even though I have a jacket, but it's irrelevant, it's just a bit cold here. Yeah, they don't have a suit and a tie and this suitcase and so on. So they are normally like, look like we do, right? So
like people in the research lab.
Yeah, like people in the research lab, and maybe they have a Ferrari in their garage, might be, but still they look normal and they talk to you like you're also like equal to them. So I like. I'm really enjoying the whole community here. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that before you were not so into social media, but I talked to you maybe a year ago, so you made some social contacts, like I think Instagram or something like that, and then you become
not Instagram. Yeah, so I have a Twitter account. This is like the social media where all the Bitcoin stuff normally happens, like the discussions. I'm not very active there, but still I have like a few thousand followers.
Oh, that's quite a lot.
Yeah, so I have a YouTube channel where I just dump videos that explaining how to use our software and hardware. So they're not very well made, therefore I don't have many subscribers. But yeah, I was also enjoying the conferences. So first time for a very long.
Yeah.
I was actually enjoying the conference and speaking from the stage and explaining my ideas to people. Yeah, so enjoyed it much more compared to quantum physics, actually.
Yeah, actually.
Probably because when I was reporting what we did in the lab, I didn't feel that excited about what we actually did.
I think it's important to find your passion, and now you're really pumped by what you're doing and other people's encouraging you. I think it's very important. So every day you're starting a new working day and you're like, oh, today I will do something cool. I mean, it's really important.
Yeah, and sometimes I don't sleep until 4 a.m. Or don't sleep at all, and just at 5 a.m. I think, okay, now I can go to work actually because the subway works again and continue working. Yeah, so.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, what you're saying, it seems like a very passionate job. It's not even a job, I think it's just a hobby. I cannot say that you have a job, right? You have a hobby, which you spend time.
Well, it's like both of them together, yeah. So you kind of, but I mean, this is, I think, the perfect way when your work actually is also your hobby. So when you enjoy what you're doing. Yeah. And it is also often for researchers in quantum labs, right? So people that are staying until late at night on Sundays and Saturdays in the lab, this is what you used to.
Yeah, it's like, you know, the Shane Bennett, I talked to him on another podcast, and we recorded, I think, on Saturday, something like 25th of December. It was maybe 6, 7 p.m. and he was in the lab. And it's pretty standard of him. That's the standard approach he takes. Yeah, maybe one more topic which I want to cover is sort of combining quantum technology and Bitcoin. And do you think that quantum computing or quantum technology as a general thing will be a threat to Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin is, as far as I understand, Bitcoin security is pretty much based on computational difficulties.
So the main threat here is that elliptic curve cryptography can be broken by Shor's algorithm that is available for general purpose quantum computer.
Could you maybe elaborate what's the elliptical curve? Because I've heard this term a few times when I read these papers about Bitcoin, but I don't really get it. It's just like how complicated to crack the key.
So basically, yes, the key that controls your Bitcoins, the private key, is just a number. And then your public key is a point on the elliptic curve. So the curve looks like this. And then you have a point there. And this private key and your public key are related. Basically, what you do, you take one of the points that is well-defined, the generator, multiply it by the secret key, and then you get your public key. Well, doesn't matter how exactly. The main idea is that if I give you the point, it is extremely difficult for you to tell what is my private key. So like if I know the private key, then I can very easily calculate the public key, but not the other way around.
So it's really computational difficulty.
It is irreversibility and computational difficulty of this reversing of the point to the private key, to the number. And the factoring Shor's algorithm of factoring numbers actually can, or like Fourier quantum Fourier transform, it actually can solve this problem not in exponential time, but in polynomial time instead. So it is much faster. Basically, the whole public key cryptography is broken in this case. There is a research that is happening, like developing the new cryptographic systems that are resistant against quantum computers. And it's going on for a few years already. And I think that we will get reasonably secure post-quantum cryptography soonish. And hopefully, this is like what I hope will get into Bitcoin as well. The thing is, in principle, we can include new signature schemes into Bitcoin system.
So you're talking about, sorry, you're talking about updating Bitcoin to something new. You're not talking about like forgetting about Bitcoin and creating completely new things. It's just updates of Bitcoin.
It's just updating, yes. So it basically what we can do, we can switch from this elliptic curve cryptography to post-quantum cryptographic system. So this will be like a soft fork, so-called. Basically, the majority of the whole network needs to agree that, okay, let's migrate to something new. And then everybody will migrate. And then the only Bitcoins that will still be hackable by quantum computers are the old ones for people who didn't move the money to like new post-quantum addresses. And this might be also a good thing. For example, there is a bunch of lost Bitcoins. So Bitcoins that were lost because the private keys are lost or because the owners died and so on. So basically the coins that are not spendable. And in principle, if we make this migration to new postscriptum and ask everybody who cares about their money to migrate to new system, then quantum computer, when the creator of the quantum computer will eventually create and break the elliptic curve, they will get a huge grant from the community, right? So everything that people lost over the last 10 years will belong to the creator of the first quantum computer. So it's a great grant, I would say.
Yeah, sounds very decent. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that we have time because both quantum computers are still in baby pants. So it will probably take another decade or multiple decades to develop. And also post-quantum algorithms are appearing. Some of them get broken quickly. So for new cryptography, it's also tricky a little bit. So if you invented a new cryptographic system, it's not enough just to make theoretically perfect algorithm. You also need to think about the implementation because like if you implement it poorly and make it not resistant against classical computers, then you have a problem. So there can be side channels and so on. So yeah, it's a tricky field, but I think that we will get there and should be able just to migrate into a new system.
And for the Bitcoin community, there is not like central banking. So it's just community as a whole should agree that we should do something about, let's say, quantum computing, and then we should migrate because there is no like authority which will tell, okay, it's time from the 1st of January, everybody moves to a new method.
Yeah, so there is also like the decentralized ways to kind of enforce this migration. So, for example, every node in the network at a certain point can start signaling that they support this change. So they just in their messages that say they set a certain bit. And we know that, okay, if this bit is set, then this guy is basically telling us that he wants to upgrade. And then we count what is the percentage of the whole network that want to migrate. So then when we reach, for example, 95% of the network, we say, okay, now we can just migrate, and the other 5% will have some problems, but I mean, okay, so they will be forced to upgrade, but we already have a 95% majority, because there is always 5% of retards that don't want to do anything. Yeah, so as soon as we reach this threshold, we just migrate, and we are good to go, yeah.
Yeah, and actually, maybe one more question. I know that this mining process is based pretty much on computational power of the hardware. And do you think that when we have a quantum computer, it will be wise or useful to use it for the mining, or it doesn't work this way?
Yeah, I think that it can be actually used for mining. So there is another quantum algorithm that is pretty useful, Grover's algorithm, and it is very generic. So basically, this algorithm gives you an answer to any problem in, I think, like square root of 2 to the power of n or something like that. So basically, if for a normal task like finding this hash, so yeah, just to give some background, how mining works. You take your block, that you want to kind of create, and then you brute force a certain field of this block, just trying different numbers and hash this block. So the hash is an unreversible function that shuffles all the bits around, and then you have the output that looks completely random. So basically it's like a mixer of the bits that gives you a random output. But for the same input, it's always the same output. And the task is to make the input in a way that the output starts with a certain number of zeros. So basically you need to brute force the input. Another thing about hash function is that when you flip a single bit in the input, the output changes completely. Yeah. So basically, you just take a certain field, you start brute forcing the values there, and just hope that at some point you get the hash that has a number of zeros in the beginning. Yeah. So this is a stupid brute force. The difficulty is therefore 2 to the power of n, where n is the number of zeros that you need to get in the beginning. So the Grover's algorithm can do the same faster with the difficulty of 2 to the power of n over 2. Yeah, so like square root. But imagine if you normally have to brute force million, square root of that is only 1,000. Yeah. So it's like a huge computational advantage. So in principle, quantum computers can be used for hashing. So I think that they will actually find the application for this mining. So they might be a new generation of the mining hardware. Yeah.
So this is the only problem. We still have to develop a very powerful quantum computer, which is left.
So you need a very powerful quantum computer. Annealer might work as well, and also you need this hash function is 256 bits, right?
Yeah.
And also it has multiple rounds, and the algorithm itself is very difficult. So you need a pretty big quantum computer to do it. But eventually we will get there. So actually getting advantage in the hashing is, I think, even faster, even easier than breaking elliptic curve cryptography. Because for breaking elliptic curves, you need a precise answer. So you actually need to take the public key and calculate the corresponding private key exactly. Yeah. So with this hashing and with Grover algorithm, what you can do, you can just approximate it and just hope for the best, because basically there is a very large amount of valid inputs that gives you a number of zeros in the beginning. So you don't need to find the best of them. You just need to find one of them, and with a certain probability, then you will already get some profit. So it's actually very promising. So you can work in Bitcoin and still work on quantum physics.
Yeah, and I think that when the quantum computer becomes really powerful to the way that it can correct, let's say, some elliptical curves, we will have a few more problems, not just cracking the Bitcoin, because I think our crypto methods nowadays are based on the similar technology to the Bitcoin, right? So if you
so basically HTTPS is broken, so like accessing websites securely. Email encryption is broken.
Quite a few things.
So I think that big corporations like Google, Facebook, and others will also join this development of post-quantum crypto. So it's not only Bitcoin's problem; it's like the world's problems.
Yeah, I think we talked for quite a while. I really enjoyed talking to you. You had quite an interesting stories that you moved from quantum physics to Bitcoin. I think it was quite interesting to learn. And if somebody wants to follow your steps, I think it's very important to at least listen about your story. So
yeah, and also feel free to reach out to me. So anybody, my direct messages are open, and I will be happy to help and get more smart people into Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think it's good. Maybe somebody can even work with you and collaborate with you or help you in some way. Yeah, I think it was a good hour. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me. Thanks.